guys. It's Lavetta.
It's Miriam.
Welcome to Notorious Women Podcast, a comedy podcast about some of history's most notorious women.
That's right. That's right.
Miriam has me cracking up. I can't even get it out.
Almost broke you today.
Yes, you did. But I love it here. And
it's my favorite place. Yeah.
Hopefully you guys love it. And this is just a quick reminder to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Also share with your friends and family. Copy the link and send it to them.
Oh, and we discovered if you're on Apple Podcasts or if you listen to Apple Podcasts, go in the app. I think you're already going to go in the app. Oh,
yeah, if it's on your phone.
But if it's, it's there in the app because Apple is working it out. I don't know.
Yeah, Stitcher and Podcast and Spotify are a lot easier and iHeartRadio are a lot easier apps, I think.
See, hopefully. I'm very lazy and I have an Apple phone. And so it says podcasts on the little thing. So I clicked it and there we are. So,
so do like Miriam. Just find it, but
wherever you get, if you get them elsewhere, then it's not a problem. But
yeah, it's not a problem. But I mean, how are you feeling? This technically is the last episode of our season 1.
I'm so excited.
Episode 13. Are you?
Whoop, whoop. I am excited about.
Yeah.
I I feel like it's been we've had it's like a solid chunk of thoughts and ideas and people, you know?
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh, it goes by so fast. But I love this. So this is a passion project. I love talking about, notorious women, whether they be heroic or, horrific. I just think that it's just so important to have these kinds of things where you can learn something and hopefully laugh, Yeah. So on that note, I think we should get started.
Probably.
This week, you are first, my darling.
It's me.
So, yes. Who is your notorious woman for us this week?
All right. So my notorious woman. So here's what I was thinking. I was like, we can't end the season without me finding a wonderful Jewish woman to talk about.
Of course.
Or my mother will yell at me. And, she's not wrong. But who
my favorite Jewish woman is besides you?
Okay, because the correct answer is me. But besides me, go on.
Beverly Goldberg from the Goldbergs.
Oh, yeah, of course. So I'm rolling my eyes because I think it's really funny. I think it's really true that there's something about Jewish culture that for me is, just like a little PTSD, I grew up with it. Oh God, that embarrassing voice. I know it so well, which you didn't. So you love it.
I love it.
And people are Seinfeld. And I'm I know. I'm they're all my uncles. I can't.
Oh my God, I love it. And Curb, I'm a Curb girl. So
it's really stressful.
I love it.
That's just, it's like Friday night
Jewish
dinner.
Friends say that.
It's really true. But it's funny because but I love when other cultures that deep dive into their ins and outs and I'm obsessed with it because I can connect to it because it's an other, which I grew up as an other, but it's not I don't go, oh God, I remember 3rd grade that happened. It was really embarrassing and I wanted to die. You know what I mean? So Beverly Goldberg, I know her. I know her.
Oh my God.
She was 4 houses down. Okay.
She is ridiculous, and I love it.
The actress is hilarious.
Oh, the actress is so great. She's so great.
So
love
good.
it.
But it literally is oh no, this is uncomfortable for me.
PTSD.
Yeah.
So who's your fabulous Jewish woman you have for me today?
Okay, so she is complicated when I say she's Jewish. Okay. I don't know that everyone knows that she was Jewish. Her name is Hedy Lamarr. What?
Ooh, I knew that.
What?
Ooh, this is gonna be good.
This girl right here. Okay. So she was born Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler. I did it in an Israeli kind of accent.
Okay, you have to do that again for me.
I don't know that I can. Okay, I can. Believe. Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler.
Okay.
Yeah, I did it. Do you know my mom used to, Steven Spielberg, the very famous director, Spielberg. Ugh, E.T. was so good. Spielberg. Mom, it's Spielberg. I know what it is, Miriam.
She's just claiming her people. I get it.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
She's like, he's one of us. I get it.
He's essentially your cousin. Okay. Cool, Mom. Thanks. I've never met him at any Passover we've ever had. Okay. So she was born in Vienna in 1914, and she was the only child of her parents, Gertrude Kiesler, they called her Trude, and Emil Kiesler. Emil was a Galician Jewish person. He was a banker, and her mother was a pianist and came from an upper-class Hungarian Jewish family. Now, so her mother actually converted to Catholicism, and she described herself as a practicing Christian and raised her daughter as a Christian, but she wasn't formally baptized. And I, as well as my fellow Jews, probably, I'm just assuming, have a theory about that. And that
assimilation.
Totally. Yeah. And think about it, Vienna in 1914, right? Yeah. Maybe our child will have a better shot at all the things in this world if we're not Jewish. Yeah. So my family would easily be like, y'all, she's Jewish. She's Jewish. Okay. But, I obviously that was like, it gets more fun as we go along. Don't worry. But, but she was raised essentially secular, right? Okay. So when she was a kid, she showed an interest in acting, and she was very fascinated by like theater and film. When she was 12, she won a beauty contest in Vienna because she's so pretty. And
yeah, Hedy Lamarr is gorgeous.
I mean, yeah, look up her picture. Yeah, cannot argue. But she also began to gain an interest in invention because her father, who would take her on walks everywhere they went, he would explain how technology functioned. He broke it down for her, which I think is interesting because he was a banker. So it was just kind of a interest.
Miriam, are you saying that even though she had a lady brain, she could understand science and complex theories? I'm shocked. I'm clutching my pearls, darling.
I can't imagine that that's really what I'm saying, because I mean, she does have a lady brain.
Yes.
And we all know. I mean, I said science. You said science. And ladies? It's confusing. Weird, right? Cool. Yeah. So this isn't, so she started taking acting classes in Vienna. So one day she forged a note from her mother and went to a place called Sasha Film, which was at the time, it was the largest Austrian film production company of the silent and the early talkie era of movies. So, and she was able to get herself hired as a script girl, which is like hilarious to me because
wow, I didn't
she just
know
like
that.
Walked in. She's like, I mean, I don't have an exact age, but something like 13 or 14.
Man, kids were grown ass back then, man. Like 13-year-olds just going to work.
They just do what they want to do, Yeah. I mean, and somehow that was fine. I don't have a clue. I don't know more. Maybe you can tell me, people, world, Lavetta, anyone. But I don't.
No, I didn't know this part about her life.
Yeah, and she. Wow. That was that. While she was there, she got a role as an extra in a movie called Money on the Street in 1930, which was around when she was like 15, 16. She got a small speaking part in Storm in a Water Glass that same year. And then she was cast in a play. Producer Max Reinhardt saw her and cast her in a play called Are you ready? It's my favorite title ever.
I'm ready.
It's called The Weaker Sex. It's cool, right?
Yeah.
It's good. I think they're talking about women because we're weaker. Cool.
Cool.
I'm just trying to use my lady brain to pontificate. Okay. And we all know that that's going to be a challenge. All right. So it was performed at the theater in Der Josefstadt, as my mother would tell me it's pronounced. And he was so impressed with her that Max Reinhardt brought her back with him to Berlin. Now, I don't know like the specifics, but she's 16. And I feel like my 16-year-old is certainly not going with that guy to go do that thing. No.
Well, again, 16-year-olds back then were 26. Because there's some grown-ass people. They had to be to grow up, man.
That's true. They really did.
But I'm with you. My 16-year-old's not going anywhere. Some dude. Nope. Not without me.
No, I mean, maybe we'll go together.
Yeah.
And if you are speaking with him, I will be in the room the whole time. That's what's going to happen. Or like not, because I have things to do. But so she actually never trained with him. She actually never appeared in any of his productions in Berlin. But she did meet a Russian theater producer named Alexis Granowski. And he cast her in his directorial film debut called The Trunks of Mr. O.E. I don't know. It was 1931.
Oh.
It starred Walter Abel and Peter Lorre.
Oh.
They sound familiar, don't they?
Peter Lorre, yeah. I mean,
right?
But that's also a great title. Oh,
I
yeah.
know, right?
Yeah.
The Trunks of Mr. O.E. Titles were better back then, don't you think?
Yeah, I'm terrible at titles. When I'm writing, I'm like, kites? The wall? I don't
sky.
The sky. The grass. I don't know.
I don't know. It's just a good story. Read it, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a good title either. So Granowski moved to Paris, but she stayed in Berlin and was given the lead role in a movie called No Money Needed in 1932. Then she starred in a film, I knew none of this, which made her internationally famous. Okay. So it's early 1933. She was 18 years old. Okay. She was given the lead in Gustav's film called Ecstasy.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of this?
Uh-huh. I've heard about it from Karina Longworth's podcast. You must remember this.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love her. Okay. I did not listen to that episode.
Also another fabulous Jewish woman, Karina.
Yes, that's true. We're probably cousins. I assume every Jewish person is my cousin. Because probably in some regards they are, but you know, maybe not technically though. Anyways. Okay. So she played in this movie, which you know this, a neglected young wife of an indifferent older man. And it became both celebrated and notorious for showing her face in the throes of an orgasm. Also, there was a close-up and brief nude scenes. So this is 1933, and this is like, I mean, this is not in America, but this is before the Hays Code. She claims that she was duped by the director and the producer.
Well, I actually think it slid because it was a European production, because the Hays Code had already come into effect in America. But
they had. Okay.
Yeah, in America. It happened around the talkies.
I thought it was 1934.
No, it happened around the talkies because of the Fatty Arbuckle.
Arbuckle.
I always wonder. I'm like Archie.
You're
Fatty
like
Arbuckle
Addie
scandal.
Farbuckle.
Yeah,
I did listen to that episode. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay, so. But she says she was duped, but other people who were part of the movie were like, no, she knows what she is doing. Listen, whatever. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, I hope she was not duped. I'll say that. But if she wanted to do it, do it.
You're right. It was imposed. It began to be imposed in 1934. But prior to that, after the Fatty Arbuckle scandal, they started instituting unofficial one.
Oh,
because
okay.
the Fatty Arbuckle thing happened. So they were like, oh, it's because of, this is a side note, guys. This like,
Totally.
oh, because of the scandalous and the debauchery in Hollywood.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
But you're right.
But
I'm corrected.
I did not. It was not a fever dream that it was 1934. That's good to know.
No, yeah, that's 34. Yeah. And then that scandal, the Fatty Arbuckle scandal, happened in 1921.
Oh, that was so many years before that.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Because of that, the government was like, what are y'all doing over there in Hollywood?
And they're all naked looking up, drinking, like what?
Yeah.
I don't know. What's your question?
But I'm so sorry. Go ahead, darling.
No
sorry
worries.
to interrupt you.
So she was very dismayed and she's now disillusioned about taking other roles. So I think she wasn't expecting it to be as racy as it was, is my guess.
I also think that people forget when you're young and you're trying to break into the industry, getting a lead role is very difficult. So it could have been a little bit of she wanted to do it. And then once she got on set,
she was,
which that would not be, they try and pull that crap nowadays. So I can imagine that,
right?
She's on set and they're like, oh, we just want a close up. It's going to be fine. And she's like feeling uncomfortable, but she doesn't feel like she has the status or the agency to refuse. And also it's like, well, will they just get rid of me and hire another actress?
Right.
And this is a lead role. So
yeah. And honestly, like in the acting world, very good I think people who are not in the world don't quite understand. Like we think of it as artistic. We think of it as expression, that it's not, that there's a level of art to what it is we're doing when we are naked. And I like that in this world where more and more women are getting like a little bit more of a choice, not a lot, a tiny bit. So it used to be you didn't have 100% of a choice. And now there's like, 92%. What was the show? There's a show. Oh, I forget. Sal was telling, my husband was telling me this, that he really likes it. And the first season, the lead actress, who was amazing, was nude for half of it. And when they wanted to sign her for her second season, she was like, totally, but I'm not going to be nude, because she's already been famous. She's already known, and she can make those contracts. And so they agreed.
Yeah.
So
also,
I mean, still not great.
Yeah. And like having in my earlier days when I was a model, I've actually posed nude before for like a photographer, like a legitimate photographer. And I only agreed to do it because I knew that the photographer was legitimate.
Yes.
And artful, and I was familiar with their work, but there's also a closed set. There's ways to handle it. But I also, when I first started modeling, I had a guy, I was doing test shoots, and test shoots is what you do to get like your portfolio,
right. Yeah.
like beefed up. And
I watched Top Model for a hot minute in the early 2000s. Yeah. So yeah, that's why I know that.
This fool tried to get me, I needed like bikini shots or like bathing suit shots. So we were doing that. And then he tried to get me to just go nude. Now we were shooting in his apartment, which is fine.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I want you to just be just your skin on this bear skin rug. And
He didn't say nude. He said just your skin.
Yeah. And I was just like, no, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And he was like, I don't understand what the big deal is. All the top models doing it, And he mentioned like Steven Meisel and all these like top photographers. I'm thinking, man, you ain't Steven Meisel. Like, I would get naked for Steven Meisel, but not for you. I don't know you like that, player. Like,
listen, didn't we all watch Fame? Okay.
Exactly.
Come on. What a bastard. I'm glad you were able to speak up for yourself.
So I'm just like, but again, had I been on set, let's say if I was on set and this was like, if it's for Vogue, it's one thing, but let's say it's on set and they're telling you, oh God, what's that famous Italian calendar? I think it's the Schiaparelli. No, what is it? It's the one where it's known for the nudity.
I have no idea.
I'll pull it up.
Okay.
And
this is not a world I know, but
it's
go
like,
on. Yeah.
Oh, well, let's say a TV show or a film, right?
Yeah.
is it Schiaparelli? Oh, it's an Italian. It's very, very famous, and all the like top models do it. And it's the whole point is like it's nude, but it's artistic nude. And high fashion, you can have nudity or whatever. But let's say like I can understand how she would feel
pressure
kind
to
of
do
pressure
what
in the
they're
moment.
asking her to do. Yeah.
Right. Because you don't, and also with film, there's so many other people that contribute to the final outcome. You never know how they're going to edit it. And you would know as an actor.
Yeah.
As you get older, they tell you, like if they tell you, oh, let's just do one take the way I want it, even if you don't want to do it that way. And every actor knows, don't ever do that take because that's the one they're going to use.
That's the one you're going to win the Razzie for.
Yep.
Okay.
That's the one they're going to use.
They're going to be like, why were you so stupid? They'll be like, they said mess around and do it stupidly. That's why.
Yep.
Did you listen to this? I think it was a This American Life episode where they talked about this writer, editor of like, I don't know, it was like New York, he was New Yorkie something. And his boss was like, go, I think it was not Mary Stuart Masterson. Oh my God. Who is the lead in Weeds? What's her name?
Oh gosh.
You know. Okay. Y'all Google her. Okay. So he was going
Mary
to have
Louise Parker.
Mary Louise Parker. It was her. Yeah. And she was like, great. You know what I think would be good for this magazine is that I will do some nudes for you. And he was like, oh, this is such an easy project. Thank you so much. And I'll, go through and just, that'll be the article about what it's like. And she said, the deal is you have to do nudes as well. And it's a great story. I don't know what episode it's on, but listen to it. But it's really interesting, his point of view. And then he said he got home, told his wife, and his wife was like, yeah, you have to do this. Because every woman is like, y'all think it's no big deal, but it is a big fucking deal. Please understand. And he does, he goes through with it. And it's really, and he says, it was, and she did her part. It was all very tasteful. It was all very beautiful. But it was all very, very, very stressful. And I really love that because we like call it what it is.
Call it what it is. It's not easy. And the name of that calendar is the Pirelli, Pirelli calendar. It's known for that.
Pirelli.
So the Pirelli calendar, and again, there's nothing wrong with nudity in and of itself. And I think most women, even younger women would agree to that, but it's usually it's all about who's offering it up and for what purpose. Again, Stephen Meisel, Pirelli calendar. Okay. Yeah. I'll take off my clothes because I'm going to look good as fuck.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to have that print framed on my wall for everyone to see. Okay. Yeah. It's the best I'm ever going to look,
Yeah. But it's also, it's like, what do they say about pornography? You know it when you see it. But anyway, darling, I'm sorry to get off track.
Okay, that was a long road away, but we're back now.
Yes.
It's okay. It was a worthwhile road. The scenery was beautiful. Okay.
Yes, it was.
So the film itself actually gained world recognition. It won an award at the Venice Film Festival throughout Europe. It was regarded as artistic. So it was actually well received. But in America, right? Okay, surprise to nobody. It was very negatively received and they wouldn't even play it. It had negative publicity. Women's groups were very upset. So it was banned in America and in Germany. It was
rude.
That sounds right. Okay. So she started playing a number of stage roles. As she won accolades from critics in a play called Sissy. Admirers sent her roses to her dressing room. They tried to get backstage to meet her, and one very insistent admirer was named Friedrich. I bet you it's Friedrich Mondel. Yeah. He became obsessed. So gross. Gets grosser. So Mondel is so funny because it sounds so Jewish because it is. Anyways, he was an Austrian military arms merchant and munitions manufacturer. And he was reputedly the third richest man in Austria. Why was he rich? Because he sold arms to countries that were starting things like wars. Cute.
Yep.
She fell for him. He was charming. He was fascinating. She was very young. He was much older. He was like 33. Her parents were like, yeah, no, he's friends with Benito Mussolini, and that's bad for us because we're Jewish. But she was like, it's fine. I love him so much.
Young women. I love him, mother.
So he was friends with Mussolini, and later he became friends with Adolf Hitler. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Girl, you're Jewish. Okay. So August 10th, 1933, she married him. She was 18. He was 30. Yeah. It's 33 or 33. It's cute, but he's a Nazi. Okay. So there is an autobiography that is very much alleged. There are issues with it. The title of it is Ecstasy in Me. So yeah, I have a feeling she wouldn't have chosen that as a title. But she describes him as extremely controlling, and he hated her role in that movie, and he prevented her from pursuing her acting career. She claimed that she was kept a virtual prisoner in their castle home, Schloss Schwarzenau. That sounds like a Nazi camp to me, but it
yes, it does.
It's just me, my trauma. Because, I mean, if someone is friends with the Nazis, he's probably not going to be the best husband.
Yeah.
And
I absolutely believe he would find a beautiful young girl.
Yep.
Love that she's beautiful and she's this actress, then marry her and then immediately say, you can no longer do that thing that attracted me to you.
Yep. And be like, that girl on that screen, she's mine now. Okay.
Yeah.
So he was like busy selling munitions to the Italian government. And his own father was Jewish also. And then he started getting ties with the Nazi regime of Germany as well. She wrote that both dictators attended lavish parties in their home. And she went with him to business meetings where he conferred with scientists and other professionals involved in military technology. And these conferences were her introduction to the field of applied science and nurtured her latent talent in science. So Nazi military technology is what inspired and informed her of her science abilities.
Well, the Nazis were very organized and in their hate campaign, which is why we have all this documentation, because you know what? The Holocaust actually happened, people.
Yeah. And we can prove
know
it.
Why? Because they recorded it all.
Yeah. I mean, because they were so proud of themselves.
They were proud of themselves. Yep.
That's why we have all the information. Oh my God. I mean, okay. So surprise, surprise, her marriage did not last.
I'm shocked.
I know, right? Word. I thought I've dreamed of kept prisoner in a castle by a Nazi-loving man, but I guess dreams get smashed.
Can you imagine also, like, you're Jewish, your husband's Jewish, and they're conferring with the fucking Nazis?
I mean, that's where he made all his money. That's insanity.
Yeah. And it's just sellouts are in every group, girl. Like,
listen, right? That is a fact.
There's some people who are walking around who are very famous today. Some black people who are consorting with white supremacists.
Yeah. That's bad. Yeah. I had to tell a Jewish friend of mine that not a friend, Jewish person, or Jewish white person, that white supremacists don't like Jewish people, and she had no idea.
Really?
Yep.
Even after the whole tiki torch, Jews will not replace us. March.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, what about in a very recent history? Didn't tell you, but I didn't say that because I try to be nice, and so I was
sometimes
nice.
You're just like, I'm gonna walk away.
I was like, just so you know, like if you're walking by and you think you're super safe and maybe you'll join them. No, they hate you too.
And again, Miriam, people are dumb. People are dumb, girl. They come in all colors. and ilks and stripes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A lot of dumb people walking around the earth. I'm just saying.
A
lot of dumb
it's real
people.
amazing. And I thought maybe she didn't know how to read. I thought that was an option.
No.
Okay. So she separates herself from her husband in 1937. So there's in the autobiography, which again is very questionable as to who wrote it. Someone wrote that she disguised herself as her maid and fled to Paris. But other accounts say she persuaded him to let her wear all of her jewelry for a dinner party and then disappeared afterwards, which I hope it was that one.
I've heard that one.
I think that's kind of clever. So she arrived in London in 1937 and this is a fun story. She met Louis B. Mayer, who is head of MGM.
Yep.
I mean, I know all about him because
another Jewish man.
And he was in London scouting talent. And so he actually made her an offer of $125 a week, but she turned it down. And then do you know what she did?
What did she do?
She booked herself onto the same boat that he was on. So it was a New York bound, fancy boat. And she managed to impress him enough to secure a $500 a week contract instead.
He offered her $125 and she's like, nope, I'm going to show up and looking fabulous like a movie star. You're going to offer me $500. That's boss moves.
Girl, it worked, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And he was the one who persuaded her to change her name to Hedy Lamarr. So, Mayer's wife loved the beautiful silent film star Barbara Lamarr. And so she suggested, how about Lamarr? And so Hedy Lamarr. And he promoted her as the world's most beautiful woman.
And let's just a side note here that Jewish women have not had the best representation as far as like objects of desire in Hollywood. So that's another thing. Like, it's like,
it's very true.
She was like a Jewish woman who was like considered like, the most beautiful woman in pictures, in Hollywood pictures. And that's also something that I think, and it wasn't until I listened to Karina Longworth's podcast that I realized that I was like, oh yeah, I couldn't think of like one like modern Jewish woman who was a leading lady, a romantic leading lady.
There still isn't. And I still see like little films here and there, and they're making it very clear that it's like a Jewish girl. So she's like awkward and weird. And then you look at her and you're like, she's actually beautiful. You're just making her awkward and weird.
So one of those things where from the 90s, girls are awkward and weird if they have glasses.
Okay. And, like everyone's all Jews own Hollywood. The people making these decisions are whatever they are. They're not helping anyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's also a simulation, another form of simulation, which never works. It never works.
It doesn't. I mean, how many times do we have to remind ourselves that it never works? I don't even know. But more than this. Okay, so 1938, she's making films. She does Algiers because he loaned her to another producer. She was the lead, and she was billed as an unknown but well-publicized Austrian actress, which is like a little true. And he wanted her to be the next Greta Garbo or Marlene Dietrich. Now, according to one viewer, when her face first appeared on the screen, quote, everyone gasped. Lamarr's beauty literally took one's breath away. And she was then typecast as the archetypal, glamorous seductress of exotic origin. So she's Austrian. Okay. She's Jewish. So her second American film was I Take This Woman, which co-starred Spencer Tracy. That was put on hold. And then she was put into a movie called Lady of the Tropics, where she played, this one's fun, ready? She played a mixed race seductress in Saigon opposite Robert Taylor.
Good old Hollywood.
I don't know what happened. I think I blacked out just now.
Hollywood, yeah.
Because I said words, but they didn't make any sense. I'm exhausted.
Awkward. Some things
Hollywood,
are
like,
problematic
what the
from the
fuck?
beginning. It's problematic from the beginning. So
yes.
That's why you can't watch old movies without knowing that. Like, you can't. Yeah. It's problematic as fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny how it like really didn't get better. This is like the 30s. I tried to show my kids Peter Pan from the 70s. Mm-hmm. Now, Disney is very clever. That movie, it's on there, right? It's on like Disney Plus, but it is hidden. And you have to be a grown up to watch it. And we couldn't figure it out. And I was like, oh, because I don't know. I don't remember it. And so I started watching it. And like 17 minutes in, like we turned it off. And they were like, why? And we're like, because it is all kinds of not okay. Like,
yeah.
Oh my God.
Didn't age well.
It did not. It is bad. Watch the Mary Martin version. Even that's a little questionable. There's the newer version. Maybe we should do a newest version and I will play Peter Pan. I think I've gone too far off topic.
I see you.
I'm just trying to get a production of Peter Pan going.
I know.
That's why we're here. Okay. I feel this was the last episode of the season, so I had to get it in there quickly. You know what I'm saying?
Got to get it in there. Yep.
Okay. So she does a bunch more movies. There's like 7 more movies. You can look it up. That's not what's interesting. Although it's fun. She played an exotic Arab seductress in White Cargo, and it was a huge hit. And it was her most memorable film quote, delivered with provocative invitation. I'm going to say what the quote is, but I'm not going to do it well. Okay. Her character was Tondaleo, and she says, I am Tondaleo. I make tiffin for you. Which, like...
I can't do this. It's like that Steve Carell gif from The Office. I'm not doing this with you people right now. I'm not doing this.
Lavetta's getting up and walking away.
I cannot do this. Nope.
Oh God. It was 1942. Why? And it like the line sort of typified the kind of roles she was doing, right?
Yeah.
And this made she was bored. And she started taking up inventing because she was so bored. She did more movies. The last film she did with MGM was Her Highness and the Bellboy in 1945. So her off-screen life, it says here, this is like Wikipedia and biography.com, by the way, and her personality were very different from her screen image. She was very lonely. She was very homesick. It says, this is Wikipedia, it said, quote, she might swim at her agent's pool, but shunned the beaches and staring crowds. She couldn't figure out why people would want her autograph. There's a quote saying, Hedy was the most incredible personal sophistication, has the most incredible personal sophistication. That's what a quote is. You have to say the actual words, Miriam. She knows the peculiarly European art of being womanly. She knows what men want in a beautiful woman, what attracts them, and she forces herself to be these things. She has magnetism with warmth, something that neither Dietrich nor Garbo has managed to achieve. Ooh. Damn.
Ouch.
Fighting
Also,
words.
it sounds a little bit like blonde versus brunette.
You know, right? Yeah. Exactly. There's cats in Hollywood and they're clawing each other. Okay.
I bet a man said that.
Oh, 100,000%.
Yeah.
It was, writer Howard Sharp said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was man. It was a man doing man things, you know. But I think it's really interesting because listen, like this is all in the 40s, right? And she just got herself out of like Nazi Europe, right? Just in time. Mm-hmm. She's Jewish and would have been considered Jewish, whatever her mother had converted to.
Right.
They didn't care. And there's another quote that describes her assimilation. Richard Rhodes said, Of all the European emigres who escaped Nazi Germany and Nazi Austria, she was one of the very few who succeeded in moving to another culture and becoming a full-fledged star herself. There were so very few who could make the transition linguistically or culturally. She was really a resourceful human being, I think because of her father's strong influence on her as a child. She also tended to speak of herself in the third person. Now, that's the end of the quote. I gotta say that I think she had a lot of issues with she couldn't wrap her head around the dichotomy of her life. That's what I think. The fact that she spoke of herself in third person. She like married a Nazi before they took over and then got out.
Yeah.
I mean, armchair therapist me thinks there's a lot going on,
Yeah, definitely. Survivor's guilt too,
Yeah, for sure. And I have no idea what happened to her parents. So one thing I didn't really talk about yet, y'all, she was married 6 times.
Oh, wow. Get it in, Hedy. That's what I'm talking about, girl. Mm-hmm.
Listen, girls got to do what girls got to do.
What a
girl got to do him.
do.
And girls got to do him. And girl got to do him. And then some more hymns.
Hey. It's all good.
Yeah, exactly. So this was bizarre. I can't quite figure it out. So it says that she adopted a son named James in 1939 during her second marriage to Jean Markey. She married him twice. But so throughout her life, she said he was adopted, not biologically related. But it's years later, her son found documentation that he was the out-of-wedlock son of her and actor John Loder, who she later then married as her third husband. But then other sources are saying that no, he really was adopted. I don't know how she would hide an entire pregnancy.
They did it back then, but
her husband would have to know, right?
Yeah, it sounds bizarre though, also.
Right? And it's like, if you're pregnant, you just tell him it's his, right?
Yeah, that's
makes
so
no sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know. She had more kids, Denise, 1945, Anthony, 1947, with John Loder, who either adopted James or was already the father. I don't even know. And then she also had other husbands, Ernest Stauffer, W. Howard Lee, and Louis Boys, which is funny. Okay, so the first was a nightclub owner. Then Howard Lee was a Texas oilman, and then Louis Boys was her divorce lawyer. None of them lasted very long, but that's fine. She did what she needed to do, So she wanted to join the National Inventors Council, but was reportedly told she could better help the war effort selling war bonds because she's famous.
Right.
So I feel like I've heard of this before. Have you heard of this? They would go like to a war bond selling campaign with this guy named Eddie Rhodes, right?
Yeah.
And she
Very
would
common. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's so fun. I love it. But you can't do that anymore. Right?
No.
Like now people are filming it. So they're like, this is the same guy she has flirted with. So let me explain. She would go to these things. She would go on. She'd be like, thank you. And then she'd be like, let me pick a sailor or whatever. And she'd be like, oh my God, you total stranger, come up here. And then he would go up there and she'd be like, giggle. And he would be like, I'm embarrassed. And she'd be like, if you want me to kiss you, you all need to buy war bonds. And when they'd get enough purchases of war bonds, she'd give them a little peck on that cheek. Right? And then they'd move on. And nobody would know that it was the same guy everywhere.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like a USO / war bond, like, rallying the troops, like propaganda.
Propaganda.
It's kind of like what they do at like charity auctions, I would say, like.
Yeah.
You know, today. So
and it was like
equivalent.
It was like something to do, right?
Yeah.
Like it was like live performances, so you'd go. So meanwhile, she actually did continue to do her inventions. I don't think that's how you say that. But apparently That's how I say
I know what you mean.
I'm not a scientist. If it was unclear before, I think I clarified just now. So she was very self-taught, no formal training, but she would tinker with things. She created a traffic stoplight. She created a tablet that would dissolve in water to create a carbonated drink. But I mean, we already had Alka-Seltzer at the time, and apparently it tasted like Alka-Seltzer, which was not her plan. So during World War II, she had read that radio-controlled torpedoes had been proposed. However, an enemy might be able to jam such a torpedo's guidance system and set it off course. So she discussed this with her friend, who was a composer and pianist, George Antheil, and they raised the idea that a frequency hopping signal might prevent the torpedo's radio guidance system from being tracked or jammed. So they received a patent for an idea of a radio signaling device, or a secret communications system, which was a means of changing radio frequencies to keep enemies from decoding messages. So it was originally designed to defeat the Nazis, but it actually became an important step in the development of technology to maintain the security of military communications and cell phones. This is so fascinating. He synchronized a miniaturized player piano mechanism with radio signals. And then it says Antheil did it, but I think they worked together, sketched out the idea for the frequency hopping system, which was to use a perforated paper tape which actuated pneumatic controls. Okay, I don't know what I just said, but I decided to say it because people listening might know what I just said. So that's what I just said. It's very scientific.
Something for smart people.
Yes, for the smart people. And then, so they employed a man named Samuel Stewart Makedown, who was a professor of radio electrical engineering at Caltech, to implement the idea. And then she hired a law firm to search for prior knowledge and to craft the application for the patent, which was granted on August 11th, 1942, under her married name, Hedy Lamarr. So she was married to the Markey guy at the time, I guess. So they didn't adopt the technology until the 60s. The principles of their work are incorporated into Bluetooth and GPS technology and are similar methods in the legacy, or like the OG version of Wi-Fi. So, okay, that's cool.
Hedy Lamarr created something that led to Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth technology.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
She kind of blows my mind.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, she's still going tee-hee, I'm pretty in movies. And she was very talented. She just wasn't able to do her own thing. And so she formed a production company in 1945, which they made a couple of movies. Her biggest success was Delilah in Samson and Delilah in 1950. And then a couple of others that one was well over budget and not a commercial success. So she was finding her ground, as a creator of films too. So around this point, her career went into decline around the later 50s. So she went to Italy to play multiple roles in a movie called Loves of Three Queens in 1954, which she also produced. This one apparently was somewhat of an epic failure in terms of how much money was lost, which was millions. So that wasn't great. And then she played a couple of other things. But I think she started having some issues that I mean, is not talked about based on the research that I did, which is not, by no means, AKA hashtag not historians. But she was signed to act in the 1966 film Picture Mommy Dead, but she was let go. She collapsed during filming from nervous exhaustion. And I mean, if you're going to collapse from nervous exhaustion, you're obviously fired, right? That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. You can't have feelings unless we're filming them for the movie.
Say that again. You cut out a little bit.
Oh, did I? I said you can't have feelings unless we're filming them for the movie, right?
Oh,
Actual
gotcha.
feelings on your time. No, thank you. And this autobiography that I've referred to, called Ecstasy and Me, was published in 1966. So she said on TV that it wasn't written by her, that much of it was fictional. She sued the publisher. She said many details were fabricated by its ghostwriter. But then she was sued by a man named Gene Ringgold, who asserted that the book plagiarized material from an article he had written in 1965 for Screen Facts magazine. I don't know what happened after that, but I think she had some drug issues as well. And so as I keep talking, you'll
allegedly
hear, it's all alleged. It's all alleged, which is why, I know that there were some issues. That's it. But in 1966, she was arrested in Los Angeles for shoplifting. So the charges were eventually dropped. In 1991, she was arrested on the same charge in Florida. She stole $21.48 worth of laxatives and eye drops. She pleaded no contest to avoid a court appearance, and the charges were dropped in return for her promise to refrain from breaking any major laws for a year. So, just to hear though, the 70s, it was a decade of increasing seclusion. She was offered scripts and television commercials and stage projects, but none that piqued her interest. And then in 1974, did you know this? I did not know this. Okay. She filed a $10 million lawsuit against Warner Brothers and their Warner sister. Sorry, I can't help it. I've been watching Animaniacs. Clay, do you watch Animaniacs?
I haven't in a while, but okay. I know what you're doing.
Yeah. But if you did, you would think that was really funny. Okay. So remember in Blazing Saddles, Hedy Lamarr? Yeah, she was pissed. So she sued them for $10 million. Mel Brooks said he was flattered. The studio settled out of court for an undisclosed nominal sum and an apology. It said an apology to her for almost using her name. And Mel Brooks said that she never got the joke, quote unquote. Okay. With her eyesight failing, she retreated from public life. She settled in Miami Beach in 1981. So in 1997, her and Antiel received the Electronic Frontier Foundation Pioneer Award and the Bulbignass Spirit of Achievement Bronze Award, which is given to individuals whose creative lifetime achievements in the arts, sciences, business, or invention fields has significantly contributed to society. There was an image of her on a software suite cover in 1996. She didn't want that. She sued the company. It was complicated. I think they settled because they used her image because thanking her for her work. But you have to pay for that image. Yes. She has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Now, this is very sad. She became estranged from her older son, James, when he was 12 years old. And their relationship ended abruptly, and it says he moved in with another family. They didn't speak again for almost 50 years. She left him out of her will, and he sued for control of her $3.3 million estate when she passed in the year 2000. And then he eventually settled for $50,000. So, there's a movie in 2017, director Alexander Dean. It was a documentary called Bombshell, the Hedy Lamarr story. And that goes into her issues with drug addiction and more about her technology work, which I recommend. So I'm going to say one more thing. They were in 2014 inducted posthumously into the National Inventors Hall of Fame, which I think is something that would I think it's sad she didn't know that she got into that for doing what she did.
Yeah, I love that though.
Yeah, right. So she led a very, very interesting life.
Yeah, Hedy Lamarr. Thank you for sharing that.
You're very welcome. I mean, she's amazing.
Yeah, amazing. And you guys should go and look up her pictures, her films.
Yes.
Also check out You Must Remember This podcast as well. I think Karina does a really great episode on her. And we're going to, for my Notorious Woman this week, it's actually Notorious Women. It's a duo.
Oh,
we're going to do a 180-degree turn.
Okay.
So
Let's
my
go.
Notorious Women for this episode are, I believe it's pronounced Raya, but it could be Raya, but it's Raya and Sakina. They're sisters. Have you ever heard of them?
No.
Okay. So my sources today are mainly from an article, an EgyptianStreet.com article by Nadine Khalid, entitled Raya and Sakina, the True Story Behind Egypt's Notorious Killers.
Oh my God.
Another article, a Medium.com article by Ad Maliora, entitled Raya and Sakina, The Obscure Truth Behind the Killings, Serial Killings. And then a YouTube channel. There's a channel called the Brief Case channel. It's like history and crime and things like that. So it was a really great episode. And then Wikipedia and other shorter videos on YouTube. So, now, so Raya, but Raya was born she's the older sister. She was born in 1875. Both Raya and Sakina were born 1875 and 1885, respectively. Raya was born in Aswan, which is Aswan, Egypt, to Ali and Zainab Hamim.
Okay.
Now, shortly after she was born, her father, she and her sister, when they were growing up, their father died.
Okay.
And so, actually after she was born, and so her pregnant mother at the time moved to a place called Kafr el Sheikh, forgive my pronunciation, a province in the Nile Delta between Damietta and Alexandria, where she and then her sister Sakina, who was born in, like I said, 1885, mainly grew up. So they mainly grew up in this area. Now, during their childhood, the family was very poor. Very, very poor, and they barely were surviving. And so because of this, Sakina and Raya were often sent out to sell things on the street just to eke out a living, like vegetables, any other basic goods. So they were very, very poor.
Okay.
Now, Raya was the older, so she was married off first. But her husband died soon after. So as a Muslim custom at the time, her husband's younger brother, Hasbala, offered to marry her.
That's a Jewish thing too.
Yeah. And back then, I think, because women they didn't have jobs and things like that. So that was like a very normal thing. Now, Hasbala, he worked in the cotton industry. So he basically worked in like a cotton factory, anything related to that industry, because it's Egypt. So they're known for their cotton. Right? Yeah,
Egyptian cotton. Yeah. Those are the expensive sheets,
Exactly. Now, Sakina, the younger sister, again, she was born in 1885. So she eventually married. But after her and her husband lost their first child, the marriage ended in divorce.
Okay.
So Sakina, in order to just get a new fresh start, she moved to Alexandria. Now, Alexandria was known as like urban, like it's like moving from the country to the city. It was known as like up and coming, cosmopolitan area. So she moved there, and then Hasbala and Raya, they were having a hard time, and Hasbala realized it's hard to take care of a wife. And they later had, believe 4 children of their own. So his job wasn't cutting it. So he and Raya eventually moved to Alexandria following Sakina.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So they're all in Alexandria together now.
They're all in Alexandria together.
Okay.
And after she was divorced, Sakina eventually found another man that she married. So,
okay. That's good.
The two sisters and their husbands are now living in Alexandria.
Okay.
Okay. So again, they all moved to Alexandria in hopes of better opportunities, and they got into, in addition to doing stuff that they knew about, they also got into what we would consider today calling subletting. So basically they would rent out like a couple rooms, and then they would rent out those rooms. They would sublet those rooms. Girl,
real estate is where it's at.
Yeah.
They were ahead of the game. Okay.
Yeah. Now this was a little bit more complicated because they were poor, as you can imagine. They had been arrested throughout their lives for like petty crimes, usually involved with thievery. So they couldn't really rent out these places a lot of times. So they'd have to go through quote unquote dealers. So the subletting became a little bit more complicated, but it was working for a while. It was working. Okay. And again, and just so for note, Sakina's husband was a man named Muhammad Abdullah. Abdullah. I think it's Abdullah. I could be mispronouncing that. So it's Raya and Hezbollah. That's her husband. And Sakina and Abdullah, Muhammad Abdullah. Okay.
Okay.
So they did this business for a while. Like I said, it was fine. But then Sakina and Raya got the idea. Now, they got the idea that to go into, let's say, this is what, at some point, they, along with two other men named Arabi and Abdul Rez, they decided to focus on expanding this type of business. So they rented an entire house.
Oh, okay.
That became now known as the House of Beauty, in which the first floor was dedicated to gatherings.
Okay.
In the middle was a bar and a place for smoking, like hashish and other things.
Yeah.
Water pipes, that kind of thing, And then the second floor was exclusively for the guests and their quote unquote companions.
Oh, they made a whorehouse.
You got it.
Okay.
You got it. Yeah.
Good.
Yes. Bravo, baby. Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Oldest profession. Okay.
Works every time.
It does. 100%.
Now, the house was close to a British Army base. So business was good.
Yeah. Okay, girls. You know what you're doing. Okay.
And they didn't discriminate. They brought in the British, the local people. Anybody could come in. Even women could come in.
Are you a human with money? Welcome.
Exactly.
Yes.
Now, for context, a side note, in 1914, World War I broke out in Europe after Archduke Franz Ferdinand was shot, sparking war in Europe. And Egypt had been basically occupied by the British since 1885. Okay?
Yes.
So the war, like it upended a lot of the normal businesses. So that's also why Hezbollah started having trouble in the cotton industry. So he's trying to work a legit job, but the war upended that, right? Which is that made the need for them to find other forms of making money. But the war is also good in other ways. So because they moved this house, and that's why they got the idea to have this house near the British Army base.
Right.
That's also why business was good. Okay. And one historian in one of the articles also noted that World War I, because it disrupted normal business opportunities, it at the same time it allowed like what you would call quote unquote informal economy to emerge, and it allowed Egypt's poor like Raya and Sakina and their husbands to earn money in unconventional jobs.
I think that's how it should be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Let's just people make their money. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's like regulate the health and safety of things without, throwing judgment shade. That's what I think.
Yeah. So business was good. Now, business was so good that they eventually opened up 4 different brothels throughout the city.
Okay, we're running the town. Okay.
Yeah. And for the first time in their lives, they're actually successful at something. They're not only just making ends meet, but they actually have a surplus. They're actually making a lot of money.
Ooh, what's that like? I don't know.
I know, right? So this is again, and I'm sorry, the British had been in Egypt since 1882. Excuse me.
Oh, okay.
I misspoke. Yeah. So business was good with the brothel. The war helped that. It helped that.
Yeah.
But the war ended in 1918.
Yes, it did.
So when the war ended, that a lot of the British soldiers started going back home. So they started to lose some of their customer base, and then things started to kind of go back to normal, quote unquote. So the money that they're able to make in these informal economies is starting to dry up. Okay. Now, on top of that, so this started to happen about 1918. On top of that, in 1919, the local Egyptian people started to rebel. So there started to be and want to throw off the shackles of colonialism, because that's basically what it is, right?
Yeah, fair.
So, while, military things not far away may help the business, problems right on your front door hurt business, even brothels.
Which is a shame.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
So needless to say, the brothels started to suffer. And so all of a sudden they're freaking out, desperate at the possibility of their new wealth disappearing right before their eyes and throwing them back into the, barely surviving state that they know so well. And at one point they did start to kind of go hungry. That's how quickly it went away. Because I would imagine that they're probably spending a crazy amount of money.
You got to sell that Rolls Royce, girls. You got to sell it.
Yeah, but I think, new money doesn't always know how to hold on to money. They don't
I would be in a lot of trouble. I would be this is the 2-month extravaganza trip we're all going on,
Yeah, and also the thing about when newfound wealth, a lot of times you don't have access to people that help you, that teach you how to build it and hold on to it.
That's true. I have a husband who would be like, don't go on that trip, Miriam.
Yeah.
And I would be like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So according to some authorities and scholars in 1919, around this time, realizing that their precarious position was basically coming back, the gang's homicidal tendencies began to surge.
Uh-oh. That's not
good. According to historians, and it's probably true because women are just smarter than men. I'm just going to say it.
That's fine. It's true.
Raya and Sakina came up with the idea of befriending and luring wealthy women from the markets to their house to steal their money. Because back then, Alexandria was known for a lot of wealthy people and wealth, and people that they had, probably kind of emulated around this time. But back then, wealthy Egyptians didn't put their money in banks. They put it in gold that they often wore in jewelry.
Oh, so if you get that jewelry, you get that wealth. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. So they came up with the idea to lure the women back to the house. And this is what authorities think would happen. So they would go to markets, and because they're women and, other women feel comfortable with them, they would lure them back to the house, to the one or both their homes at some point. Start making them, give them drinks, offer them drinks, get them drunk. And once they're drunk, the husbands would come in and kill the women.
Wow.
They would steal the jewelry and then dispose of the bodies. Oftentimes, either near or under the homes.
What? Wait, what homes? Their homes or the women's
where
homes?
they were staying? No, their homes. So where they were staying, because again, they're back to renting places because their money is just So now So authorities believe they did this from 1919 until about 1921.
Oh my God, for 2 years?
Yep.
Stop. They're just disappearing. Women are just disappearing.
Yes.
Oh my God.
And people were on the lookout because obviously these are well-off people. So their family members are reporting them. And, so policemen were sort of on the lookout for stuff, but they could never really get any leads, right? So around this,
nobody knew how this was happening because awful, but very clever, but awful, but very clever. Okay.
Now, around this time, a policeman discovered a body in the streets near the neighborhood of where the two couples lived.
Okay.
Also around this time, the owner of one of the apartment buildings that Sakina rented out got an offer to rent out an apartment by a wealthy Italian man. But the man requested that the water pipes be changed because they were very old.
Okay.
So while putting in new pipes, workers found the remains of a body that was later linked back to the room that Sakina rented secondhand.
Oh, wow. Oh my God.
So authorities were called in and immediately they go into Sakina's house and there's a strong odor and she's constantly burning incense. And they're like, that's weird.
That is weird.
So at first they were like, they brought him in for questioning, but they couldn't really make anything stick. But the authorities kept digging and eventually 17 victims' bodies, women and men, were discovered underneath Raya and Sakina's house, apartments, places where they were living. 10 were eventually identified, but the other 7 were too decomposed to identify.
What? Oh my God. What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
So
I need a minute, but keep going. This is fascinating.
Yeah.
Whew. 17.
So, 17.
Damn.
So the trial began on May 12th, 1921. And it included, so basically the sisters kind of started to turn on each other.
Yeah.
So authorities were able to get Raya's daughter, Bedia, I believe that's how you said, Bedia, who was a very young girl, but she testified that she had witnessed her parents committing the crimes.
Jesus, that is trauma. Okay.
Yeah.
Whew.
So 4 days later, on May 16th, Raya, Sakina, and their husbands and the 2 accomplices that were kind of like their bodyguards and probably like muscle were found guilty.
Okay.
And sentenced to death.
I mean, probably don't murder people. That's probably right. I don't know.
And the jeweler who would purchase the stolen merchandise was sentenced to 5 years in prison.
Okay. I mean,
now, yeah, I mean, because who's to say that he knew about the murders? He was selling, stolen goods.
I mean, I'm not a capital punishment kind of gal, but like, I mean, don't kill 17 people and then like
17 people.
That makes me fear you as a human. That you're just like, I have an idea. Let's murder people. No.
Yeah. Now, so on December 21st, so about 6 months later, or 7 months later, on December 21st, 1921, Raya and Sakina were hanged.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Being the first women to be given corporal punishment in Egypt's history.
Wow.
And then the following day, their 2 husbands were also hanged. Yeah.
Way to make the history books, ladies. Whew. Yeah. Why were the men hung a day? Why did they get to live another day? Was it because they're men and they have penises? What happened?
No, that's a great question. So that's basically what happened. That's the facts that I gave you.
Okay.
Now, how much of this is true has been up for debate for a while.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people feel like, so there's 2 theories of basically what happened. So the first theory is that what I just told you happened, that they basically came up with the ideas and they were kind of leading it and the men went along, But so that's the first theory. But also within that theory, a lot of people were uncomfortable. So Nadine Khalid in her article, she notes that from the start, misogyny was rampant in the way that this story was structured and presented to the public.
Well,
right?
I mean, the way you just told the story was like they did all these things and then the men came in and killed them. But then it was like, wait, so they handed the ladies a drink and the men committed murder.
Right.
I'm not saying they weren't accomplices 100%, but they also could have been given no choice but to go bring this back. You know what I'm saying?
Or they were all equally culpable and
right.
money hungry, but the way it was framed. And Nadine Khalid also notes that despite a precedent case around the same time in Tanta, where a man named Mahmoud Alam had committed a series of murders exclusively of female victims, the case of Raya and Sakina gained more attention in media coverage because the perpetrators involved were women.
Okay.
And it was linking, so they also use it to link Raya and Sakina to misdeeds to quote unquote public immorality in society, casting the women and their crimes through a very specific lens. Basically, women, am I right, dudes? Am I right? Bitches, right? Yeah.
Bitches be bitches. Okay, you know what? First of all, we're taking that word back. Yeah. All hail the bitches.
All hail the bitches.
Second of all, even like the way you were telling the story, like now that you're bringing it back, like you're right, like it doesn't sit well.
Yeah.
In terms of like,
and it's basically like it's always the woman's fault, right? So despite the four men and two women being involved, the way the story was framed was to put most of the focus and blame, therefore the blame on the two women.
Yeah.
So it's misogyny pure and simple.
It's full on. Not that they didn't accomplish the shit out of this, maybe.
Yeah.
But also, like, how many ways can this be spun for this to exist? If you were going to make this story, right? If we're going to make the movie or write the book, right? You could have it where they were desperate and they didn't know what to do and their husbands were freaking out. And they said, we're going to do this. You have to go to the market and bring them back here. And they were like, no, I don't want to. Like, who knows, right? Or they were like, great idea. But we actually have no idea.
Yeah. And also the fact that they were running brothels. So again, that's, tied to the moral immorality of these women. And so they must be evil.
Exactly.
And even the way that they talked about the women in the newspapers, they would often name Raya and Sakina and then just say their husbands.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
But that's why we have to like illegalize. See, that's not a word. And I went to college, but my primary education was in the States. But we need to stop demonizing things like prostitution. Because to me, running a brothel does not tell me you are a good or bad person. It just tells me you run a brothel.
Yeah.
But
and also
it's society.
Yeah. Hold on. And also just keep in mind that, this misogyny, it doesn't mean that these women are like not guilty, but it's just like, why are they more guilty than their husbands?
I don't think they are, but I think it's like, oh, this is what happens. Blah, blah, blah. Must keep our women from going down this terrible road.
Yeah. And, Professor Elena Chidi, a professor of Middle Eastern and Turkish studies at Stockholm University, she also notes that it's all misogyny the way it was framed, but also just keep in mind that these women were not that ultimately they were still complicit in these murders, so they weren't innocent. So even if we reframe and really have a fresh look at how it was framed, to keep that in mind. But she also recommends that you say, her along with a lot of other historians say that instead of saying, just refer to this as the 1921 murder cases rather than the case of Raya and Sakina.
Yeah.
The fact that why does the woman have to get more than what she deserves and less than what she deserves in society?
Yeah.
Because again, there were four men and two women, but the way it was framed, the women are supposedly more guilty than the men.
because women should uphold the moral values to teach unto the children that they should continue to bear whilst barefoot and cooking their men dinner. That's why, Lavetta. So simple.
I know. Yeah. And then now another theory is that they didn't commit these murders at all, that it was all designed to turn the focus away. It was all designed to convict these people on a bogus, trumped up charges because they were revolutionaries, Egyptian revolutionaries.
Oh.
So that's another theory.
Okay.
That they were resistance fighters, and the government run by the British and some, and their Egyptian puppets to demonize these freedom fighters. So that's another theory that I also want to throw out there as well.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And so that's something that keep in mind when you're listening to these stories, particularly the older stories in a part of the world that you may not be as familiar with the political climate of it, that sometimes the way things are framed are not always, even if the facts in it are true, that they were convicted and hanged.
I mean, we have the same issue
behind it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we have the same issue in our own country with certain stories and of what happened. I feel like now we're currently trying to relook at some things. So other cultures and societal norms that we don't quite understand might be
even in our own society. Story. A lot of us are revisiting stuff from the 90s, and also keep in mind, a lot of historians are saying, even if you believe the first thing happened, that this is really more, these people are bloodthirsty, but this was really a crime, perpetrated because of the economic status, the economic hardships that, one would say that not all poor people end up killing people for their money. And then people's, murderous tendencies kind of come out. But also keep in mind that because of their economic circumstance, this was like rife with allowing this for them to even land on this idea.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's fascinating to me. I know we could go on for days. We probably shouldn't, but running a brothel to murdering just feels like a giant leap.
Exactly.
That's what I can't wrap my brain around it.
There are two different types of murders. It's like, me, I love I'm a true crime person. Yes, and people who run brothels or gamble, or even people who steal, that's a very different thing than people who kill 17 people.
Yeah. I'm just that you were like, we were on a boat in Italy and now we're in the Sahara. What happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want
to. But it's just really interesting to just always, even when we're telling stories, I was so glad that I found that second theory, because it's like, that's really, really interesting.
I think it's that. I think it's totally that.
It's like, did they really kill it? And apparently, obviously this is a huge story in Egypt. A lot of Egyptians know about this story. They've had tons of, TV shows and films and media around, this case.
Okay.
But some of the historians will want you, they just want you to really think about it. Like whatever the truth is.
Yeah.
Just always, when you hear stories about murder, again, this is not to justify murder. Me personally, it sounds like, because a lot of the, especially Muslim, historians that are female, tend to gonna lean in their direction. They do believe it was this happened, but again, the way it was framed was that Sakina and Raya were the masterminds.
Right.
They're the real evil. These evil women is kind of like that whole Eve thing. Eve made Adam do it.
Absolutely.
That's kind of like how I'm feeling. But again, I'm not sure. I'd love to hear from any, especially of our Middle Eastern listeners who are familiar with this story, what their thoughts on it are.
I'd love, yes.
If it's something that they, that they can shed some light on, of this story. But I just thought but I do believe that they were serial killers.
Yeah.
But they were part of a group of 6 people who killed.
I don't know. This doesn't feel right that they were the absolute mastermind, because they could also, they could have poisoned them. Yeah. They could have been the perpetrator. but they weren't. They brought them in, and then, according to the story, right? And then their husbands came in and did the deed.
And also keep in mind that they got the women drunk, but the men strangled the women.
Yeah.
Strangled the women.
Whew, okay. Whew.
You know, the victims. They strangled them. So
fascinating.
So yeah, that's the story of Raya and Sakina of Egypt from 1921 serial killers.
That is a good find. Wow.
What a way to end our first season of Notorious Women. You know, I like a murderess. Oh, I love a murderess. Oh, yes. Yes.
Oh, Lord.
I like a bad girl.
You do.
In my history and in my podcast, not in my real life now.
No, absolutely not. Right. Or I don't think you'd like me as a friend because I'm so good.
I know.
I'm not that good.
Well, that wraps it up for another episode of Notorious Women Podcast. We'd love to know what you guys think. Again, thank you for listening to us. We really appreciate it. Please remember to follow us on all the things, to subscribe, to download, to share. Again, copy the link and just send it to your friends or loved ones or family. Spread the word. Send us your suggestions. Oh, I'm sorry.
We also have a Patreon page now that is live.
Yes.
That you can go to. Just go to, what is it?
Patreon.com/Notorious Women.
What she said. Yeah, that. Come hang out with us there. You can join for as little as $2 a month or like $1,000 a month. Whatever you feel is reasonable. We are here for you. Thank you so much for joining us for season 1. If you have missed episodes, catch up because they're there on all the things. And we'll be back. We should be back next week, the beginning of season 2, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we're not gonna. I don't think we're gonna take a break between there, but yeah, we love your support, guys. And Miriam, do you want to tell them what our handle for IG is and our email address?
I do.
I
do.
And while you're doing that, I will tell them for Patreon. It's patreon.com/Notorious Women. You can find us there.
And IG is Notorious Women Podcast. Come play. I have a lot of fun there. It's good times. And then for our Gmail, it is notoriouswmpod@gmail.com. If honestly, that was a lot. So you can also DM us at Notorious Women Podcast on Instagram. That also works too. And let us know what you think, your thoughts, your ideas. We could have conversations. I like conversations.
Yeah.
And that's it.
All right, guys, that wraps it up, and we will see you hopefully next week. No, we will. We'll see you next week
for season 2. All right.
Yay! Bye-bye.
Bye.